First of all, thank you to Monsurat. But let me be very clear. What I want to tell everybody today is different from, because those other panelists would tell us the technical aspect of what Monsurat has told us. For me, we talk of mortgage in Nigeria. The fact is that 20, 25 years ago, mortgage was totally opaque in Nigeria. You couldn't see anybody that would stand up and tell you this was what mortgage was doing in Nigeria. So, I want to tell you exactly how did we get here before we start talking of the FMHL. So, when I was young, I was taught that when you run into obstacles, you do a bypass. If you cannot go through water, then find a way to go to the other side. So for us, we have gone through some bypass issues in Nigeria by our own mortgage subsector. The first is, we started with mortgage underwriting standards, which set the tone for whatever we are talking here today in terms of how do we finance what we need. We have mortgage underwriting standards for the formal, for the informal, for the non-interest housing finance, as well as for diaspora mortgages. These are the issues that led us to where we are today. Secondly, when we started, we had long-term as well as interest and tenor issues. We then on our own started to talk to the CBN and others. That was what led to setting up of NMRC. Today, we have loans of 20 years. Then it was 6 months, 5 years maximum. So today you could get a loan of 20, 25 years, and we are trying to address interest rate, and I'll tell you what we have done so far. Thirdly, we talk of BVN. We have used BVN and GSIS to tackle mortgage repayment, as well as the, not inability now, the definitive decision of people to take mortgage loans and they didn't want to pay. So that created a lot of problems for us in the subsector. Today, at least, we can track you if you get mortgage loan and we're able to get our payment back in the time that we want it. Finally, we have what we call the Mortgage Warehouse Funding Limited to tackle the short-term aspect of our mortgage financing. Then, the 25% contribution mentioned by the President, it is to aid contribution. Because if you cannot have access to 10 or 20%, then you can't even have access to mortgage. Finally, we have now come to the program by Family Home Funds Limited. Because we believe that it is when we have innovative initiatives that are 2, 3, 4, that Nigerians will have broad spectrum access to mortgage loan wherever they want it. So as far as I'm concerned, we have laid the foundation for Nigerians to have access to mortgage loans in the modicum that they want, financing the houses that they need. Thank you.
I think we should appreciate Mr. Motosho for that very insightful background. I think what that tells me is that if we could get where we are today from where we were many years ago, and we can see progress, it means that it's a matter of making the right decision, taking the right action today. In the next 5 years, 10 years, we should be moving closer to where we really want to be. So I think it's a good thing for the industry. Thank you for that intervention. So I will call on Ajia Sadiat Aliyu from the estate developers' perspective. Because when we are talking about affordability, we need developers to work in tandem with all the other stakeholders in the industry. So my question to you will be, how can estate developers support this drive to ensure affordability of housing for Nigerians? What options are on the table? What are you doing as estate developers to create innovative solutions to ensure that we can start having houses that are affordable for the large majority of Nigerians?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Hajia Mansoura, FHF, thank you for a great presentation. Thank goodness, I think MD Modern Shelter is here as well when we come to answer the issue of affordability. It's such a big one because for Dangote, 1 billion is affordable. But maybe I shouldn't raise Dangote in this forum given what's been happening in the last few days. There's a simple arithmetic I use when it comes to affordability. If you take a house at 100 Naira, for instance, and the components that go into making that house, the reason it's 100 isn't because it necessarily cost me 100 to do it, but because the I have to replace ordinarily what the state or the federal or local government should provide, it then becomes 100 naira. So I would not live in a house that I would not create a house that I myself would not live in as an urban shelter, part of our credibility. I would have to do the access road. It could be half a kilometer, 5 kilometers. I would have to bring power to the estate. Often I am creating the sewer lines to connect to the mains. I am often also having to do the main power lines to do so. So these are ordinary public goods, essentially, that actually the federal government or the state government should provide, but then you have developers that are doing it instead. So that's one huge component. Land accessibility, some of us have a land bank and that can increase affordability, but in most situations, actually, you're either purchasing also as an individual or as a developer, or you're going into a public partnership agreement or a private agreement, which also has a cost to it. The next batch, I would say, is where we all are in this economy, where interest rates are raging 30%. Inflation, I don't even know what inflation is right now. We woke up in February and cement had tripled. Iron ore per ton had tripled. You have those escalating costs. Now that's the bad news. The slightly good news is, just like you mentioned, what are developers like us doing? Because we look at this as an absolute responsibility, because we solidly believe actually that individuals deserve a house. It is the right of Nigerians, Africans, everybody globally to at least be able to get onto the poverty ladder. So there's sacrifices that we're also making. So part of the things we do is we look at what we call the Singapore model. So on an estate, you'll have properties that are 15 million. Across the estate, you might have properties that are 500 million. What you're doing is essentially what the state again should do, but because we're all reasonable Nigerians with integrity, you're going to slightly help to subsidize people at the lower end of the ladder. Economies of scale help. So when I'm doing an affordable housing, I can't do it on 1 hectare. The same access road infrastructure and others that has to support one house can also essentially support 1,000 homes. So the bigger, the better. It's hard for me to be in Lagos. I think my honorable commissioner from Lagos is here. But the larger the space, the better in terms of driving down that prices. Buying in bulk is also important. So, and engaging in manufacturing. Tiles, if you engage with manufacturer of tiles so that you kind of front load those expenses, then you normally would get them at more affordable rates. There are tricks and here and there, but it is in no way an easy thing. And I don't think that developers necessarily should be looked at to be responsible for creating affordability. Because again, 1 billion is affordable for me. If I am able to speak to Hajia Mansoura and I give that 100 million naira 10%, and another mortgager gives 400 and she gives 500, then it becomes affordable. What you're looking for actually is creating financial tools for people to get onto the first rung of the ladder. Nigerians, we should be obviously realistic and aim for a 1-bedroom or a studio rather than a 5-bedroom in a Sokoro. And then we slowly but surely move up to the chain. So I hope that helps. Thank you.
Thank you for that intervention. Again, a whole lot of factors are involved in this issue. And I'm happy that we are discussing several of those issues as we go along. Quickly, I'll take on Mr. Jackson Imadi, Office CBN, very, very critical stakeholder. Because all these things we are talking about, regulation is critical. If the CBN just says, no, you can't do this, that's the end of it. So the question is, what regulatory changes are being considered to foster innovation in the mortgage industry and to support affordable housing initiative? How flexible is also the regulator to ensure that you don't just kill these innovations that you are bringing to the market? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. First of all, I will say that the regulator is never an obstacle when it comes to innovation. Within the context of ensuring that institutions that are in our purview operate in a sound and safe manner. So it's only when you're straying from this remit of our ensuring that the entire financial system is safe and sound that we are going to say one thing or the other. But our history has shown that we are so flexible. And I can give you several examples. For instance, we are responsible, we are shareholders, in fact, in FMBN, and we are responsible for setting the guidelines that birth the NMRC. These are the real secondary players in the industry